the world. This is Purple Suede, my co-host Styled Pigeon, coming at you live for Gingerly episode 6 with the Giving Block. Today we're going to be talking about Roundly X and the Giving Block, how to make your holiday shopping help others. So to start things off, I'd like to give a shout to Roundly X. It's a simple to use app that allows you to round up your purchases into Bitcoin and other digital assets with your spare change. The set it and forget it dollar cost averaging tool helps you build wealth safely and conveniently over time. And it helped me pay off my Subaru during a time of financial stress, which is awesome. As you see here on the screen, you can sign up with code Gingerly and get $4 in Bitcoin when you start off. And if you're outside the US and you want, or you're waiting for roundups in your country, you can go ahead and start using Roundly X's portfolio tracking features and our idea bumps engine, which is awesome. We recently had 2 calls for Dogecoin and Quant that went up over 100%. So check out Idea Bumps. And yeah, big shout out to Roundly X. Today's episode is all about them and the Giving Block and their new charitable roundup. So we're excited to dive in with Zoe from the Giving Block. Nick, if you could cue the music, please. Awesome. Good morning, Style Pigeon and Zoe. How are y'all?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
I'm super stoked, by the way.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot
of
of
fun.
fun.
Whole integration and everything. Number one, I really like taking projects or ideas and mixing them up and seeing what happens. And number two, I've actually worked in conservation and hiking trail building for quite some time. So I'm topic's a little bit not close to my heart, but close to my brain for sure.
And close to the hands, maybe.
yeah, the calloused hands.
Yeah, exactly. So Zoe, welcome again. Thanks for being here with us so much. I really appreciate it. This work that we've been doing between Roundly X and the Giving Block it's just been over a year at this point that we've been working together, trying to get this integration rolled out. It's finally here. Really excited about it. So if you wouldn't mind, just give us kind of an introduction about yourself and kind of how you got to the Giving Block, because, and I guess we can talk about what the Giving Block is too. And yeah, just kick it off.
Yeah, for sure. So I have kind of a weird background, perhaps not that weird in crypto, but I have only worked in crypto. I was doing like retail jobs as a teenager and stuff and kind of trying to figure out my life. And I was very on Twitter, especially crypto Twitter and just social media in general. I ended up kind of tweeting jokingly at the late John McAfee about his political campaign. And he took it very seriously and ended up giving me a real job kind of managing social media and youth outreach for his campaign, which did not go very far, but he paid me and it was a real job. And that ended up kind of bringing me connections that brought me to MetalPay and then to an African-based crypto market called Yellow Card, and then eventually to the Giving Block.
Wow. That's awesome. Sorry to interrupt a little bit. You're blowing my mind here because I didn't know the thing about John McAfee. Personally, like I know there's lots of opinions about him, but I feel like he's like the Batman of cryptocurrency. Like he's the hero that, maybe we didn't deserve but needed kind of thing. And he's been so influential in the way that things have turned out and making people think. And so that's really cool. What was that like? What was it like working for John McAfee?
I have so many stories, so I can definitely get into that. I mean, to start with the beginning, right? He had an extremely kind of entertaining Twitter, and he was talking about his political campaign for president. And I was very much into kind of trying to, have an online Twitter presence. So I would often like just respond to random celebrities and try to get them to notice me. So I did that with him, and I was like, "Sir, it would be an honor to work for your campaign." And I went in to watch a movie. I don't remember what movie it was, but I went in to watch a movie and I came out and he'd responded 3 times. And he was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And then another reply was like, "I've looked through your page. You clearly know what you're doing." And then the third reply was, "I've DM'd you my phone number."
Oh my God. I can't even imagine. I would have freaked out on the spot.
Yeah, I was kind of losing my mind. I had a lot of fun with it in the beginning. I got him to kind of change his profile picture to like an anime profile picture. I got him
That's
to tweet a
awesome.
bunch of stuff about anime and about kind of the more degen ends of crypto.
Yeah.
I will
Were you
say,
involved
like,
during the coin of the day period?
I was a bit. That
That's
was
awesome.
not like my idea. That was something he was doing before I joined.
Right.
Probably one of the more controversial things
Oh, for sure.
that
But
he
it was
was
so
up
much fun
to.
to watch.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. He definitely, it definitely was like a big thing for him. I think it was, forgot whose idea it was, but it was one of the team members. Very eclectic, eccentric team. But I mean, yeah, he's controversial. I wouldn't approve of everything he has done in his life, but
For
like
sure.
I had some, like, every phone call you have with him or conversation you have with him was like, just, it's like nobody you've ever talked to. He's like
Yeah.
so incredibly charismatic. He makes you
Yeah.
feel like you're the most like interesting, like genius person in the world. Like very surreal. I could see how you could borderline start kind of the cult of McAfee because he was
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
charismatic. But
Totally.
that's what
No,
broke me into
yeah.
crypto
Wow.
for sure.
That's so cool. What a unique story. Oh my God. I'm blown away, honestly. That's you really diving into the deep end, right? When you get started that way. So that's really cool. So
100%.
yeah, so how did McAfee turn into the Giving Block? You mentioned Metal Pay and then
Yeah.
yeah.
So um, Eric Finman from formerly associated with MetalPay. There are a lot of people who are formerly associated with MetalPay. Kind of a
Yeah.
graduating class. It's a company that's changed a lot over
Right.
time. Um, Found me on the campaign website, and he was looking for like a kind of like viral marketing person for
Hmm.
MetalPay. And he followed me, and I just noticed he followed me. And at that time, McAfee was having a lot of legal troubles, and it wasn't really a job anymore. So I
Right.
just like DM'd Eric. I was like, "Oh, if you have any work you need, like, let me know." And he was like, "That's exactly what I had in mind." So
Awesome.
I ended up doing kind of some social media work for MetalPay. Um, I believe crypto is, it's very tight knit. So I believe the founder of MetalPay was investing in a company called Yellow Card, which is like a Nigerian based market. And I got referred there, and I was doing kind of like PR and communications for them. And that was awesome. I love the Yellow Card team. I love, all the Nigerian based team members. That was such a great experience.
Yeah.
But I was not willing to move to Nigeria or any of the kind of rounding countries for a variety of reasons, family, things like that.
Sure.
So it was a difficult job to do, especially the PR angle.
Right.
And I kind of decided to move on. And the founder, who I'm still very close with, Chris Maurice, was like, "You should check out the Giving Block. They're like, one of our kind of favorite small companies." So I joined, and I was like the 15th member to join the team. I was like, "Oh, is this a nonprofit? What do they do?"
Yeah.
And I realized, like, oh, okay, so they help nonprofits accept crypto donations. That's really cool. And then I found out like all of these really cool people like Tony Hawk and the Yusuf as well, and the team from Gemini had been using them to like donate to causes. And I
Right.
was like, "This is super cool. I'm completely down for that." And that's how I kind of ended up joining that team.
Dang. Wow. Yeah, that's a really cool journey. I've been so what's really neat about all of this is that for me when I first got into crypto way back in the day, my like 2014, my wife's brother was this cyberpunk guy who was into all sorts of crazy stuff, told me about Bitcoin, and I started doing some research and I kind of realized the potential of Bitcoin micropayments that could be used for, nonprofits specifically. And I started campaigning some nonprofits back then to try and accept crypto. And it was extremely difficult. I mean, I'm sure we can talk about this in a little bit when we talk more about nonprofits, but they're typically, slow to adopt new tech. And that's not super surprising because they're all working on shoestring budgets with, very little, younger push to accept new things. And often they would just say, no, that's crazy. We don't have time for that. We've got other ways to accept money. But this one CEO, and they may even be on the Giving Block now. I'm not sure, but they're called Hope International. They do a lot of like microloan payments and stuff like that. Their CEO, Peter Greer, I believe is his
Mm-hmm.
name. He emailed me 3 years later, so if you're doing the math, that's 2017 during the big bull run where everyone was shocked. He emailed me and he was like, "Hey, I don't know if you remember pitching me Bitcoin when you were in college, but you were right. We should have accepted Bitcoin, and we're rolling out Bitcoin donations now. So if you want to donate to us, here you go." And so I got to be one of the first people to donate. But that was like the only success I ever had. Everybody else was like, "Oh no, this is too much work, blah blah blah." And so the moment I first heard about the Giving Block, it was an immediate, wow, I need to be working with these people, because they figured out that you need to be able to offer onboarding as a service to these nonprofits, to be able to come to them and just say, "Hey, here you go. You know, we'll do everything for you. It's not difficult." And I believe the Giving Block even makes it easy for them to accept just dollars, right? If they didn't want to accept crypto. Yeah. I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah. We added, we're now a part of Shift4. That's our parent company, which is a TradFi payment processing company. So they were able to kind of add that credit card accepting component. And soon we're also going to add stocks so that you can donate stocks. But
Oh, wow. That's very cool.
yeah, I love that story about Hope International, right? Because there is this kind of tricky thing with nonprofits, which is that I actually would say that a lot of the team members and, like, people on the ground of nonprofits can be very forward thinking, and many of them are, and they're very intelligent, and progressive as tech, and trying to find new ways to achieve their cause. But this board angle does make it kind of complicated. There's a lot of nonprofit speak. There's a lot of terms and kind of concerns that nonprofits have that maybe the average person is not really familiar with. So our team, I would say like 70% of our team, and it used to maybe be more, actually comes from a nonprofit background. So they understand what nonprofits are looking for, what concerns they might have, how to communicate to the board, how to make those educational resources so that they're actually useful for the nonprofits, things like that, which is something that I found really unique when I joined the team, especially coming from a background where I knew very little about nonprofits beyond like volunteering for the Humane Society or things like that.
Sure. Yeah.
It's amazing how much you have to actually learn how to speak the language of, a group. Being in sales and marketing now, it's so important to be able to actually communicate that. We always talk about sales or pitching in general is always a transfer of enthusiasm. So I have to be enthusiastic about it, number one. If you have salespeople who aren't enthusiastic about what they're selling, it doesn't work. And then number two, I have to know how to transfer that enthusiasm to you. So I can imagine speaking to a board for a nonprofit, it's definitely not an easy task to learn how to speak the appropriate language that they'll actually understand. And in general with crypto, I'm of the opinion that the way that we speak to the public is a big issue with adoption. One of the biggest barriers that I see. And, I kind of joke that it's what happens when you get a bunch of devs handling like marketing for a company. It's like, they don't know how to talk to people necessarily. I can just see them all in their little caves coding away and doing amazing things that I definitely don't understand, but they need that sales and marketing aspect to actually drive the adoption. So I'm glad that y'all are making that so simple.
Yeah, it's definitely, I love that kind of image of trying to have devs explain, what's going on and pitch something. There's also, I think, the financialization kind of aspect, which is, investors and stuff similarly having, trying to communicate their excitement. And during a bull market, maybe that works, but outside of a bull market, not as much. And I think the thing there that we really try to communicate, and especially myself, as I've kind of grown into more of a community focused role, is that crypto is not just, it's not just like you're accepting Visa and then you decide to accept MasterCard. When you get into crypto, you're entering like an entirely new space, a community that is younger and forward thinking and has their own kind of passions and causes that they care about. So you're actually opening up not just a new way to, make that donation, but also like an entirely new revenue stream, an entirely new audience. These are people who might end up volunteering for you. These are people who might end up working for you. they're like, very, online and tech forward, and maybe aren't going to be exposed to your kind of traditional nonprofit that's been around 100 years if it weren't for that entry into the Web3 space.
Right. Yeah. So my wife and I have worked in nonprofit for quite some time. And like I mentioned earlier in the show, and so the main reason that we're currently working together, the Giving Block and Roundly X, is because of this joint idea to be able to round up into charity all the time. And that gets at this idea that, round up at the register kind of thing, where you get asked, oh, hey, do you want to donate X amount of money, like round up your purchase to this thing? But instead, we're taking that concept and being able to do it just for a cause that you care about, on a way that's like every time you're making a purchase, you're making a donation. And so my wife commented, she was like, it's crazy that nonprofits these days spend money to actually send out physical mailers, right? To solicit donations. To your point, like the disconnect between the young generation that wants to be involved and care about a cause, they're not going to send in like $2 or $3 or $5 in the mail, right? And be responsive to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So bridging the gap of how we think about legacy nonprofit giving and caring about causes to how do we make young people, really care about a cause and actually support it. I think that this new integration is really powerful for that, because the average Roundly X user, even though it's just spare change, they round up $25 a month. And so if you think about, if you go to an organization and you say, hey, you could, do your mailers, you could do your emails, whatever, or you could do this integration with us where you're asking for spare change, but it ends up being a pretty substantive thing. So that being said, like what causes do you think, we've already seen some causes like sea turtles, the American Cancer Society, but like for you, what cause are you most excited about, like as we move forward to be able to, make crypto easier?
Yeah, well, I mean, coming from kind of a dorky, crypto tech background of being very interested in that space, I'm very passionate about privacy and security and things like that. We do
Music's in my ears. I love that.
we do love anonymous donations. I am the person who myself and somebody else who's part of the team, Michael Early, was like very early on, like everybody needs 2FA, things like that.
Right.
So causes that I care about, we have Signal Foundation. We have worked with the EFF before. There's a lot of different privacy and security and anonymity focused nonprofits on our platform. So
awesome.
That's definitely like a personal cause I care about. We also have nonprofits that are like focused on providing bail and things like that. So a lot of these kind of, you could put it under individual freedom or rights or whatever you want, but these
Sure.
kind of nonprofits that are focused on protecting people from overreach from either governments or hackers or what have you.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
This is kind of a gingerly question on my end, if you don't mind me interrupting, but like, how does it actually work with the integration? Like, do I get to say, like, I want to send this money to the Giving Block? Do I get to say, I want to send this money to this specific organization? And how does it work with transparency about what that organization does? Is there some way through Roundly X and the Giving Blocks the integration, is there some way that I can see research or information about how those organizations actually work once they get my donation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll start with the kind of how it works aspect and then get into transparency. So when a nonprofit onboards with us, they are provided with a dashboard that allows them to kind of easily manage all of their various accepted crypto assets through us. So we have about 100, right? When you donate to a nonprofit on our platform, we are not middlemen. It goes directly to the nonprofit. So it is if they had a wallet, but it is all organized them through our software in a single dashboard. You can donate anonymously, or you can leave information, or you can leave just an email for a tax receipt. The exception of this kind of direct donation is our impact index funds. You can see that on the right on that donate crypto screen.
Which I'm glad you're talking about this. This is one of my favorite features of the Giving Block, for the record.
Yeah, it's so cool. I was very excited when I learned about it, when Pat, one of our co-founders, told me we were launching it. So this is the exception where, as opposed to a direct donation, you're actually donating to a fund. And that fund can be about some of these, the featured fundraisers of the day. Those cycle per day are Ukraine Emergency Response Fund. That's something we spun up after the escalation of conflict in Ukraine. All of the nonprofits in that fund, we have personally verified to be actively supporting people on the ground in Ukraine or support surrounding regions. We have women's and girls empowerment. These are nonprofits that support everything from U.S.-based women's rights to things like developing nations where women maybe don't have access to personal hygiene or things like that. We have an animals cause fund that has shelters and like endangered animal support nonprofits. And when you donate to these cause funds, what happens is your donation gets evenly spread about through all of these nonprofits, all of these member nonprofits. So that goes out, I believe, on a bi-weekly basis. So at the end of 2 weeks, all of these nonprofits will get the fraction of this like total pool that has been formed from all of these donors. So it's a really nice way for our nonprofits, especially some of these smaller nonprofits that maybe don't have the resources to provide exposure, to kind of get consistent donations. Which the consistent donation thing is something I'd love to talk about at some point, especially with respect to the Roundly-X integration, because that's definitely a huge challenge nonprofits face.
Yeah, for sure. We can hit that next. I was just going to interject real quick and say that what's really cool that this integration makes really easy for the user, Style Pigeon, to your question is, if you're on the Roundly-X dashboard and you can essentially pick the crypto you want to donate, you can pick the nonprofit that you would like to donate to, or the index fund, which is really cool. And then that's all. The rest is handled in the back end between Roundly-X and the Giving Block, and you know that your donation is going directly to the nonprofit, like Zoe mentioned. So from a user perspective, it's super, super easy. All you have to do is connect a card, pick a cause, pick a crypto you want to donate. You can even donate USDC if you want. So it doesn't even have to be a crypto. But as you saw a minute ago, the list of accepted cryptos is large. I mean, what's the count at now, Zoe? Is it?
I think it's over 100 now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I thought so. So tons of options depending on your preferences and the nonprofit's preference. So the ease of use is awesome. But
I do want curation available, and also DYOR available at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
All of the
and the Giving Block,
the
Giving Block has a great blog section too that highlights a lot of different nonprofits and causes and stuff like that. And Zoe's regularly doing spaces, so I would both keep an eye on the blog and on their Twitter because there's some really great information there if you want to dive in and do more research and kind of figure out which cause you want to support. But if you don't want to pick one, there's always an index fund. So Zoe, yeah, let's talk about the frequency of donations, because coming from a nonprofit myself, I was kind of in the same boat that you were, and I did a lot of marketing and social media and stuff like that. But honestly, the donations and the getting funds is something that everyone in the nonprofit team has to work on because it's such a big deal.
For sure.
So yeah, so what is your experience been like, and kind of seeing how that looks, and how does this new integration make it easier?
So nonprofits, of course, they, have two angles to kind of the work they have to do. There's the fundraising angle, and then there's the more important angle, which is actually, doing the work of their cause, whatever that cause may be.
Right.
And any way that you can make that fundraising angle take less time is incredibly important. So one thing that is really kind of unique about the nonprofit industry is that the majority of the donations actually come at the end of the year during what's called giving season. This has to do with holidays as well as kind of tax reasons. So preparing your kind of tax offsets for the new year. And this is great. It provides, a very substantial amount of resources for those nonprofits, but it's also inconsistent. It makes it hard for nonprofits to budget. When you think about a corporation or the startup or any form of private company, you can kind of chart out your revenue and predict quarter by quarter revenue. And based on that, budget all of your different departments. That's much harder for nonprofits because they're kind of just trying to predict this end of year big boost in giving. So with Roundly X, it's based on your like purchases, right? Because it's
Right.
a roundup feature. And for the most part, outside of, your occasional, maybe super large purchase, kind of lifetime based purchase, you're going to be pretty consistent with what you're spending per month. So that roundup aspect, when you're rounding up into charity, you're providing a steady stream of donations throughout the year through nonprofits. And when you have, more and more people signing up and using that roundup feature, they're able to kind of provide this consistent baseline for nonprofits to work with. So they know, okay, month to month, we're seeing about this much from those roundups. We're seeing about this much from our impact index fund, biweekly checks, and they're able to kind of create a less hectic and more kind of focused budget so that they can spend a little less time worrying about fundraising and more time doing the actual important work of whatever their cause is.
Which reduces overhead. And of course, every nonprofit, I'm sure, is interested in reducing some overhead.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the things that we kind of talk about a lot with nonprofits is that there are some nonprofits that are large enough that they can afford to have somebody who's like full-time Web3 fundraising or something like that. But the vast majority of nonprofits can't afford that. And we don't think they should have to afford that.
Yeah.
They should be able to put their funds where it matters. So anywhere where we can provide resources for them to understand crypto, and anywhere where we can provide a steady revenue stream, a steady fundraising revenue stream, so they can kind of think about it a little less, is definitely super important to us, which is a huge aspect of why I love the Roundly X kind of integration so much.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I love the line that you said where people can stop thinking about fundraising as much and start thinking more about the cause aspect, because this gets all the way back to something that Pigeon and I like to talk about pretty much every episode, and that's dollar cost averaging, right? Yeah, you're putting small increments of time and or money into something that you care about to grow it in a way that's not risky and it's not super noticeable to the user, but to the nonprofit, it's, I mean, absolutely game changing in terms of, a steady stream of income, being able to focus on other things more. So, I feel like the potential here is really huge. And I'm really excited to see which organizations kind of step up and really take this to their advantage, and
Yeah.
get people signed up.
Definitely secondary endorsement of dollar cost averaging. My time day trading has been much less successful than my time dollar cost averaging.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I occasionally I get back into it and I'm like, oh, I can trade. I'm a veteran, I know what I'm doing, and then just go
You
right
look
back
a
to dollar
month
cost
later and
averaging.
you're like, oh, I had
Yeah.
all these good days, but I'm actually down.
Why did I do this? So yeah. And that's something else to mention too for the traders or the people who are interested in investment and saving who watch our show. Doing this type of thing and providing a little bit of info to the giving block allows you to kind of automate your tax loss harvesting strategy throughout the year, in addition to caring about or helping a cause that you care about. So if you're rounding up into Bitcoin and you want to make sure that you're topping up your charitable donations throughout the year for tax purposes, Roundly X could be a good way to make sure that you're staying on top of that. So for organizations who are listening, especially nonprofits, who are listening and saying, wow, I would love to be able to have all of my people be rounding up their purchases. What steps would they take to be able to get on board with the giving block? Because you guys have over 1,500 charities right now, right? So
Yeah,
what does that process look like? Oh, 2,000. Congratulations. That's awesome. That's
always
so great.
growing.
Yeah, cool. I get to change all my numbers. That's exciting.
I know it's kind of a pain, right? This has been, as somebody who's part of the marketing team, a real quick aside, the whole like, how do we started with like, okay, dozens of cryptos. Now we're over 100. Do we say hundreds or do we say the exact number? Do we say over 100? Right. Okay, 1,500 plus nonprofits. We're at 2,000. Do we say thousands? Do we say, yeah, it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
All across the website, all across the blog, all across social media. You have to change it all.
I get it.
Huge stress. But
I feel that really hard too, actually, because I train pharmaceutical reps, and getting people not to say, oh, it's just this or something like that. You're like, okay, come on, like quit underselling this
Yeah.
medication.
It's actually
like,
this number. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Very
only
stressful.
a couple hundred cryptos.
Exactly. A mere 200. No. So the obvious kind of you can see right up at the top right, there's that accept crypto button. Essentially for any nonprofit that is interested in getting onboarded with both us and that Roundly X donation or that Roundly X integration, that's the best place to go. You'll just put in some kind of baseline information about yourself and your organization, and then we'll reach out to you and we'll do a call where we explain how the software works. We explain a bit about crypto itself, answer any questions, and kind of go from there. We are very kind of careful to make sure that, of course, the legal accreditation is there, that these nonprofits are, legitimate, either in the U.S. or in their native country. But additionally, that these are nonprofits that are going to be able to take advantage of that crypto fundraising aspect and are going to be able to kind of successfully fundraise and break into the space. So we don't really want to just have anybody and everybody on. 2,000 is large, but it's important to us that when a donor goes to our site and they pick a nonprofit, they know that that donation is secure and that it's going to go to a legitimate cause. They don't have to worry. So always do your own research, of course, of individual nonprofits to make sure there's something that you personally care about. But there is that baseline security there that it's not just anybody can sign up and automatically be on our site without us kind of doing that initial fact checking and kind of research there.
Yeah, and that's something that I really appreciate about the Giving Block. I mentioned earlier the roundups at the register thing, and the fact that the Giving Block has, a dedication to making sure that these nonprofits are places that our donors would want to send money to. I think that's important, and that's something that you don't really get when you're asked to give a donation either at the register or, on the street or through a mailer or whatever. So I think that's super important. Yeah, thanks for throwing that up there, Nick. Also, I wanted to say shout out to Phoebo Swanee, who's watching right now. He just left us a message in chat. Appreciate you tuning in, my dude. This is super great. So so I was also going to mention, as a part of onboarding to the Giving Block, the next step with Roundly X too is that if you want to push this to your constituents, the Roundly X team can make you an individual URL. It's especially for your nonprofit that makes it easy to blast out in an email list or at an event or whatever, to get everyone rounding up into your particular organization. So I personally would like to say that the Giving Block and Roundly X are here to be as concierge as possible, to make your onboarding as simple and as easy, and have you be as more or less involved as you'd like to be. I've even been talking to a couple of organizations already, and one of their first questions is, well, do I have to know anything about crypto? And it's like, well, Giving Block makes it really easy. It's all in one dashboard. You don't really have to worry about any of that stuff. So I'm really,
and the resources are there. You're able to dig in as much as you want,
right,
either on our blog, or we provide kind of personalized resources and all sorts of PDFs and videos. We have like nonprofit only, like just our kind of nonprofit member webinars, like every week. There's all sorts of resources there. So as much as they want to dive in, they can.
That's awesome. And talking about diving in, so like at the end of each show, I like to ask our guests, what should our audience DYOR or do their own research on after watching this episode? And it could be anything that you care about. So what do you think that people should be DYORing on today?
So I'm going to do kind of two, right? I'm going to do my duty and recommend the Giving Blog. It is has resources about everything the Giving Block, as well as crypto in general, nonprofits in general. It's very pretty and evenly laid out. There's lots of resources there. So highly recommend checking out the Giving Blog. But I will make a personal recommendation as well, just based on the current book I'm reading. I really love history, especially the history of Asia, China, India, and Korea specifically. I lived in China for a bit, so I have kind of that passion there. But the book I'm currently reading is called The Anarchy. It's kind of about the East India Trade Company, as well as the fall of kind of the Mughal Empire in India. I think it's really interesting just from a historical perspective, but I actually think there's a lot of kind of applications there from understanding how, when globally everybody is empowered to be kind of on an equal basis in trade, they can kind of avoid some of the violence and imbalance that came with the trade companies and India's lack of kind of local currency support and lack of kind of technological support.
Yeah.
So something we talk a lot about with crypto is that it can be an equalizer. Anybody, you don't need to have a stable bank in your country. You don't need to have that kind of local resources that maybe are required in the past for people to enter the global economy.
Right.
It's a huge equalizer. So reading that, you obviously get the great historical perspective, but there is still that connection there with, the importance of everybody being on an equal ground when it comes to participating in the global economy.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's an excellent resource. I personally haven't read it, so I'm going to add that to my reading list. Thanks for that.
It's a good one.
So Fibo actually asked a question on our YouTube stream, and we've kind of touched the oversight bit a little bit, but I just wanted to go ahead and read this out. Fibo said, I've had people ask me about the Giving Block. Are they monitored on Charity Watch or something similar? People are sometimes skeptical about stuff like this. So yeah, good question.
No, that's a great question. So we are not, because we are not a nonprofit. We are a private company that's a software as a service. We provide kind of that yearly subscription fee so that nonprofits can use the software and get all those resources. We have nearly a perfect retention rate because, compared to the donation stream they make, it's pretty negligible, but it allows us to keep the lights on and grow and continue providing those resources.
Sure.
As far as like the Charity Navigator looking towards our nonprofits, we do that baseline research I mentioned, but of course any nonprofit that is on our platform, you can pretty easily check on Charity Navigator. There's another one called, I think, GuideStar or something like that. That's
I
very
use
popular.
them a lot. Yeah.
GuideStar is great, and you can get all the research about any of the nonprofits on our platform. You can also reach out and just ask us. We are as neutral as possible. As much as we support our nonprofits, we do not actively promote one or the other. So if you reach out either on Twitter, you'll get me. If you reach out through our Twitter DMs, I'll be happy to provide you and do some of that research for you and give you any resources that you're concerned about or want to learn more about. So always encourage people to reach out if they're, wanting to learn more about a nonprofit. In a lot of cases, we may even be able to get you in touch with that nonprofit, and you can talk to somebody who might otherwise be kind of hard to reach if you're just trying to go through their website or something.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Giving Block can kind of be your connection to really good DYOR if you reach out to the right person.
100%.
Awesome.
And from a neutral basis as well, just what we find is what we'll send you.
Yeah, absolutely. Fibo says, thanks, by the way. Appreciate that answer. Thanks
Anytime.
for watching, Fibo, and for good questions. So we're nearing the end of the show. Any other final thoughts, Pigeon, from you or you, Zoe?
I think y'all are doing an awesome job. I'm really excited about, number one, just new applications for crypto, to just showing people that you can do all sorts of things with this new technology, and that it's not as difficult to adopt as people seem to talk about in the media and whatnot. That's the main reason that we're here, honestly, doing this show, is because we want to kind of gingerly bring people into the crypto space and say, hey, Web3 is not something to be afraid of. It's just the next evolution of the internet and how we're going to do things societally, given actually things like what you were talking about with the book and like the degradation of the faith in our governing bodies and whatnot across the globe from what I've seen and heard. So being able to do this and liberate those finances from some areas into more appropriate areas is exciting. And I'm stoked to see what else y'all come up with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll kind of close with one other thing, which is that, of course, the main aspect we've talked about is the donation aspect. We have that, our new integrations with whether it be the impact index funds or the rounding up through Roundly X. But there is more to crypto philanthropy that I would stress. It's not just a way to donate. It's a community, and it also has some very interesting use cases. So we have nonprofits which have used their crypto donations to most recently support kind of local activists and resource groups in Afghanistan. So during kind of the recent, again, escalation in Afghanistan, some of the flare-ups of kind of radical overtaking, the banks pretty much collapsed, and it became very difficult for nonprofits to send funds to their kind of on-the-ground teams. And they ended up using crypto to do that. So again, yeah, it's more than just a donation method. It is a kind of liberating and technologically empowering tool to advance some of the work that a lot of these nonprofits do.
Yeah, and as crypto people, we're on the cutting edge of this technology, and I feel like personally, to some degree, I have a responsibility to do some good with that. You know, it's not just about making profit. It's not just about securing my own financial future. It's about helping other people and helping the people that are doing the good stuff be able to take a leg up, right? And that's really important. And that's one of the biggest things that I'm excited about with this new integration. So with that, if you're watching and you're pumped about getting into roundups, go to roundlyx.com/giving, and you can start the process. It's super easy. You can get started in a couple of minutes. Zoe, thanks so much for being on the show. This was great. I had a great time chatting with you and learning about your background. It was awesome. So can't wait for our next big thing that we do. Who knows? We're changing the world together, and I'm excited to keep doing that. So with that, Pigeon, Zoe, thanks so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. To our audience, have a great one. Start rounding up, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah, you as